Welcome to the One Player Podcast, the show on solitaire board games. I'm your host Albert, and this is episode 321.
Danger, Will Robinson, danger!
Hey Julius, I didn't realize this was a space theme game.
It's not technically a space themed game. I suppose you were trying to balance spaces, but it's not a space themed game.
I was hoping you do Dora or Diego's theme songs.
I don't know either of those.
Really? Oh, my kids grew up watching Dora and Diego.
Nope. But no, today's game is Endangered, which is a game all about trying to rescue species to rescue an endangered species and prevent it from becoming even further threatened and die away.
So it's sort of a tie-in to the game 2 episodes back, isn't it? The Spill.
Yeah, actually, that's humorously enough. It follows on straight from the other one. But yes, this is another one that, again, we're trying to rescue endangered species. It is another cooperative game of similar type thing, but as opposed to last time, where it was all about action selection, this one is about hand management and action selection, where there's a whole tableau. So I suppose it's tableau management and hand management to manage your board and move stuff around and prevent the animals from being destroyed, while trying to balance that with achieving various goals over the course of the game so that the members of the UN will vote in favor of your resolution for additional money to save the animals.
I think this will be the year of the environment on the podcast.
You like having years of when they don't
I
really
do.
have very much.
Yeah, I sign random things a year sometimes.
Maybe just the couple weeks of.
Well, that's all that's left. But I'm sure we've had other environmentally friendly games on the show this year.
I suppose.
Yeah. Well, okay. So you kind of gave us a nice summary of the game. Nice little cooperative game. Let's talk about the components then. There's a lot.
There are a lot, and I do want to comment, or at least point out, I do have, well, first of all, I have all the expansions for the game, but I also have some of the deluxe dice. So one thing that is involved is there's 5 different roles over the course of the game. So like there's the lawyer and the wildlife host and the zoologist and the things like that. So there's 5 different roles. Each role has a set of cards. So there's 14 cards in each player's deck, which is comprised of, I think it's 10 basic cards that everyone has, and then 4, I think, special cards per each role. Similarly, there's 3 power cards, and these, so as opposed to the player cards, those are cards you're going to have in your hand. You're going to play out over the course of the game. You also have a power card, which is a special power assigned to your character, and so this is something that's active the whole time. Each role also has 3 dice, and these are regular D6s that are colored for the different colors. But if you have the deluxe version, then one side, the 6th side, instead of just having 6 pips, will instead have the icon for your role, which is a nice little upgrade, but very cosmetic. But I approve of it. And then there's also going to be turn markers to be able to show when you've taken your turn and when you haven't. All of those things central around a roll board. And this roll board is like the weirdest thing, in my opinion, to be included. So the roll board is essentially, it's a piece of art that represents your character and can flip over to either be male or female. And it's got this like arm jutting out of it that you slot your specialty card under that arm, and above that arm you put your dice. That arm is absolutely worthless.
Yeah, and if people don't understand what you're describing, it basically looks like this giant weird shaped key.
Yeah.
It really does. With the arm that sticks out has little notches on the top, little teeth on the top and everything. It's a key. It's just weird.
So you're supposed to put your dice there when you set up the game, but after you take your first turn, and there's usually like 6, 7, 8 turns, your dice will never stay there. Your dice stay on the board. So for the most part, those slots are empty. And the same text is printed on your specialty card that's printed next to your board. So you could have just put the specialty card next to this icon, this chit that shows who you are, which I'm fine with the chit showing who you are, but just put the card next to it and don't deal with this arm that does nothing but make storage more annoying. Like,
Yeah.
bothers me because it makes storage annoying for these things because they have an arm and they don't fit nicely in the box because they're not very square.
And is it a tight fit of a box?
Once you have all the expansions, yes.
Okay. Mhm.
I have the problem that I have a lot of content for the game.
So I think that means Julius probably likes his game. That's a safe bet right there.
Spoilers. Spoilers. How dare you spoil things like that,
I'm
Albert?
guessing listeners kind of just assume that anyway, saying you have all the expansions. And there's a few of them, aren't there?
There are a bunch and there's more coming out too.
Really?
Yeah.
And the expansions, are they like just a card or just a rule sheet or something like that, or is there like components with most of them?
Why don't I discuss that once I finish with all the components that are in the base game? I'll come back to the expansions.
Okay.
So, those are all the player pieces. So, excuse me, the last player piece is going to be money tokens. Most of your cards are going to have a money cost to be able to use them or do stuff with them. So, money tokens help you track what they are. There's these like cardboard chits of cash, essentially. Um, they're fine. Nothing particularly special about them. And then there's a year
Mm.
marker where you'll put your turn markers on top of the year marker to show that you've taken your turn. That is all of the player pieces. There are also scenario pieces. The scenario pieces change based on what scenario you're doing. In the base game, there's two scenarios. There is the tigers and the otters. But there have been various expansions, and each expansion usually adds at least one, sometimes more scenarios. And a scenario is always based on what animal it is that you're trying to rescue. So, like, there's wolves, or there's sea turtles, or there's penguins, there's butterflies. There's all sorts of different scenarios. Included for each scenario, there's an 18-ish card deck for that scenario. And the cards are all thematically appropriate to what's going on or facing against that particular animal. So, like, the tigers may have to do with poaching. So there's poaching in there, and there's mating, and there's, situations applying to tigers. Whereas the otter deck has to do with oil and oil spills or fishing, that sort of stuff. So it's different based on which one it is. Those are completely unique decks with completely different art. I've not noticed any overlap between them. Some of the cards are duplicates, similar to how you might find that, like, say, an Arkham Horror card game deck, where the encounter deck may have duplicates of it. But all the art for each one is unique and doesn't overlap between the different things. There is a board the board that comes with the game has two sides. There's the forest side and the shore side. And the animals, and so it's a grid, it's a 6x6 grid where the animals are going to be placed out. Generally, part of your scenario setup tells you where you put the starting set of meeples for those. Did I mention that there's meeples?
Just now, yeah.
There are meeples for each of the different ones. There's tiger meeples and otter meeples, and as the game has expanded, there's been more and more. The deluxe ones that I have, those meeples have printing on them. So the tigers have spots, the otters have some brown fur. The base ones don't, but hey, they're still pretty cool meeples. I actually have just kept the base ones because it's a fun little tiger. And then there are destruction tiles, either deforestation or pollution. And then there were more types of destruction tiles that have come out in later expansions. But generally, these scenario cards will throw out, in addition to other stuff, destruction of something. Whether, again, it's like oil spill or people harvesting too many trees and leaving the tigers without places to live. And those will be represented by putting out these square tokens covering up spaces on the board. Generally, those things will kill any animals that they touch, and you want to avoid that. Those are scenario-specific things. There are also things that sort of apply to all scenarios. There is a black die and an orange die. In general, the orange die is going to be used to determine whether or not the animals have more animals. If you have two animals together, it is just assumed that they are a mommy and a daddy, and that they make a baby. So you don't have to match sexes of the animals. You don't have to track which ones are the males, which are the females. We abstract that out. Um, you roll the die generally, and this can change based on the different snares, but generally the idea is you roll the die, apply some rule, which is often as simple as you must roll lower than the number of mating pairs that exist. Like if you only have one, you're SOL. But if you have six, you're pretty good. So you have to have lower than the number of mating pairs you have. And then you roll the black die, or sometimes the black in combination with orange, or some other method of destruction. And then you roll those, and that causes destruction. So every round, you're going to have an opportunity to do something. And then you have to do a bad card, and the bad card will determine what to do. And then you can have offspring, and then you can have destruction, and you'll move through that linearly. Towards the end of the game, and the amount of rounds it takes is based on the different characters. Towards the end of the game, there are going to be these ambassador cards. The ambassador cards are how you're going to win the game. You need to have fulfilled an ambassador's criteria. If you fulfill ambassador criteria, they're going to vote yes for whatever the solution is that will put into law to save these things. And there's a whole pile of different ones. There's blue, there's green, and there's black ones. And they're all very different. The blue ones in general have something to do with animals. The green ones in general have something to do with what the players have done, like how many cards you have played or in hand or money that you have. And then the black ones are a random roll of the die. And you'll weight those with your influence cubes. So over the course of the game, you're going to be buying influence cubes to pay off these ambassadors to vote with you, which is truly the epitome of how politics works. You are literally paying off the politicians to vote for you. This is real to life.
Yeah. Now it may be, it's probably abstracting the fact that you're working to educate the ambassadors and do positive things. It's not just payoff, I'm sure. It's not just graft.
Um,
Not convinced.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe sometimes there's different cards that do different things. It's like sometimes there's a card that's protest, but there's a bribery or two in
Oh, is it
there.
okay? Wow.
Yeah, it's a little straight up.
So
It's
it's
a
it's a
little
bit
straight up.
realistic. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Well, that's cool then. Actually, people are aware what's really going on.
yeah.
Hopefully you're learning something from the game.
I mean, yeah, it is what it is, and yeah, like money makes the world turn. This is
Mm-hmm.
we're not doubting that. So there, you're trying to buy or somehow use your actions to place these influence cubes, and this is the game is not nearly as explicit as I'm saying it. I have perhaps a fair amount of jadedness towards politics in general, and I will not let that spin over onto the board itself, because yeah, there's a whole bunch of ways it is that you put them out, whether it's through protesting, through activism, or through talking about it on your television show, whatever method it is that you have. Or if you're the lawyer, you get to sue them out of existence, which is always fun for me. I like suing things out of existence, always fun. So all sorts of different ways to put out those influence cubes. Those influence cubes in general will help push those votes towards being a yes. Towards the end of the game, you'll have two opportunities to get a yes vote. If you fail the first time, you get one more opportunity. If you fail a second time, you're done. Son, that's it. The animals are dead. Sorry.
Okay.
And that's both how you win and how you lose the game.
Gosh, you're so excited about this game that you went straight from components into describing the gameplay without really finishing the components discussion and skipping everything in between.
Yeah.
Because I want to talk about the art in the components.
Drat.
All the art, the art on the box, and a lot of the art in the rulebook, and I assume the cards. It from far away, it looks like a photograph, right? It
It
seems
is
like,
not a photograph. It is
but it
art
looks like one.
pieces, but they're really good art pieces. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
I totally jumped straight into gameplay and just did all the gameplay stuff there. Oops.
Not that you really love the game or anything like that. We haven't
I
talked about that yet.
I may greatly enjoy it. Yes.
Yeah, maybe. So
So
yeah,
talking about
I find that
components.
interesting. The art when I first saw the art at the store and whatnot, I really did not like. I said, "Oh, it's a photograph." I tend to just not like photograph art, right? And
It's
I think that's
not.
pretty common. I hadn't gotten close enough to realize it wasn't, which is a shame.
Yeah. The front of the box has this tiger piece of
Mm-hmm.
art, which very much has, it's not this watercolor faded look to him. You can sort of see the lines of the art as it's moving around. You can see the camera flare being represented in the picture, but it's being done in what looks to me like watercolor. That is an art theme that plays through to a lot of them, in that they are very good art pieces, but they are not photorealistic. It doesn't feel like a, what's the Frog Games? Um, yeah, Frog Games, whatever it is. So they make photorealistic pieces of art, which is not in a style that I enjoy. I enjoy the style that is being used here, perhaps because with them, to my understanding, with the Frog People, they actually took actors, dressed them up, and then drew those pictures.
Yes,
These
Flying
are
Frog Productions.
Flying Frog Productions. Thank you. They're not actors. It's just pure pieces of art. And I very much enjoy the look and style of them. I like that there's so many unique pieces of art that all of it adds thematically to it. I like that. One of the things that I know my family has enjoyed is the fact that the roll boards can be flipped over to be both male and female on either sides.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone has a chance to feel represented by those. Um, yeah, the art is lovely. I think the components are all very nice. Um, I think that the only complaint I have had about it, I mentioned it briefly, is about the roll boards just being silly for no reason. There's no reason for the little arm sticking out of it. But including turn markers, for example, so that you know whether or not you've had your turn. Like so many games, like, oh, we forgot to think about that. Well, that's included. I've already thought about those things. Like they put care and thought into it. Maybe the only thing I could talk about is there's just like the influence cubes are just wooden wasabi cubes. Like, why are they greens? I don't know. The one thing that I have added is a set of check marks when you can at the very least say, hey, this is some way of remembering this is an ambassador we're working on or have even completed. Put some little checkmark tokens, but I've just gotten some checkmark tokens and added them in. And that is purely for me so that, especially when I'm playing over interruptions, so that I can remember and sit back down and remember, oh, right, this is the ambassador that I think I can do as opposed to working on this one. If it's not obvious in the fact that one of them has cubes and one of them doesn't, having those checksums just for memory purposes, or I guess I could use them when I'm playing multiplayer, but typically there's not as much interruption, there's more memory. But having those out makes it easier for me to remember, and it's just a component I wished was in there, and for my copy is in there. But yeah, all of the components, in my opinion, are very good, especially the printed meeples that got added on. Makes it look really nice.
Okay. I haven't come across pictures of those yet, but yeah, I agree. Everything looks really nice, very well done. Um, Everything seems very functional too, which is nice.
Yeah.
Is it a
Oh,
small box?
I don't. It's not as small as like a. It's not as small as a Solo Hero series.
Is it as small as Nations dice game?
Yes, it's the size of Nation's Dice game,
Okay.
and it's stuffed right now.
Yeah, it sounds like. I want to hear more about the expansions, but that'll be later, I think. How about the rules?
Okay.
I haven't read them fully, but they seem very well laid out, very clear and easy to follow. There's lots of pictures everywhere to explain stuff. It just seems quite organized.
I agree. The rules have not been an issue. I was able to understand the rules. I think that the fact that they have big, bold areas like here's how you take your turn, actions, offspring, destruction, impact, upkeep, makes it really good. The only issue I would have with the rules is that there is a player card that similarly lists out the 5 turns of it, and it's just a quick turn reference. They made an error, in my opinion, with the reference card because the front side of it lists 4 of the phases, and then the back side lists upkeep. And it is super easy when you're learning the game to get through actions, offspring, destruction, impact, and just end up not drawing, because at upkeep you get to draw a new card every round. You get a new card, and if you forget about that,
Oh,
you're going to run short cards because everything else is really easy. Everything else just flows. But for some reason, it takes the longest time to remember, oh yeah, draw a new card. It's not there on the front of the card. I just wish that had been a little bit
yeah.
rearranged so that all 5 faces can be on a single side of the card.
Yeah, I mean, and those reference cards are so handy for new players that that those are the people that want to remember this. So you want everything
Yes.
as easy as possible for them to read and find.
Or someone who's sitting down and remembering because they have a lot of games on the shelf.
Or that, yep. I like that it's got a glossary of all the symbols and what they mean. I like when games do that. This one has one in the middle of the rule book because a lot of games will have a lot of different symbols and sometimes they're hard to figure out. But this one has a whole little table. They're all in one spot, which is always handy. Just odd that it's in the middle and not say at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a fail, especially because there's the glossary of symbols that's in the middle. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not ideal, but I've never really thought about it.
Okay. So then somebody actually is playing the game. It's not a big deal. I'm just
Most
making comments based on looking through the rule book.
I would say the part of the icons that is perhaps the one that you need the most is about the instant impact versus persistent impact cards. But really, for the most part, those icons, all the icons are really, quite easy to understand and execute on. So I've never really had any issues with it.
Okay. How about the theme then? How's the theme come through?
We feel very bad when we killed the elephants.
Okay. Yeah.
The first time I sat down and I played this game was with my wife, and elephants are her favorite animal, and we attempted to save the elephants, and the elephants have died every single time, and we have never saved the elephants, and she feels very sad.
So you're not actually killing the animals. You're just not able to save them. You're making
The
hard
elephants are
choices
dead.
where like I really want to save the elephants, but I need to this one's I can't help this one right now. He's going to walk into that bad spot. That sort of thing.
I mean,
Or are you actively like there's an elephant, shoot him.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. While you are not actively killing the elephants, you have to roll that destruction die. And when you roll that
Oh.
destruction die and nail an elephant, you feel like you nailed the elephant.
Yeah, you feel
Even
responsible.
though,
Oh.
yeah,
Hmm. That is
even though.
interesting. That's really interesting actually. I guess you could have a
So
designated person rolling. It'd be good to have somebody rolling it that's not actually playing the game.
that's not playing
just
the game
yeah.
so that it's their
Their job is
fault.
just to roll it, yeah, or have an app
Dibs,
do it,
dibs, not me. I'll get in trouble if I'm the one who always kills the
yeah,
animals.
something like that. Or everybody puts their finger on the app on the phone, and once everybody's touching it, then the dice rolled. Then nobody's blamed for it.
Um, you may not be wrong, but yeah,
But
that's
it's not gonna happen. Yeah,
strange to do, especially because there's some of them that do different things. But
yeah.
it's more. I'm more using this to highlight that yeah, you feel the theme when you're doing this. We are
Mm-hmm.
we are in a war to save these animals. We feel for the cute fuzzy animals. We want them to be okay, and when they're not okay, we are sad. And
Mm-hmm.
the theme is very much there when we're doing this because we feel bad for the poor animals.
Gotcha. All right. That's interesting. Do you want to go through the gameplay again? The rules?
Well, perhaps a part of gameplay that I hadn't mentioned is what more stuff about how you use your cards. So
Yeah.
I said all the stuff that the animal's doing about that. I don't think I focused so much on our cards and our turns. I think once I started describing the scenario components, I just moved in how the scenarios work.
Mm-hmm.
What you do with your cards are there are generally 3 different types of places that you're able to play your cards. The game starts with 4 cards printed on the board for actions. When you play cards, you're putting out more actions available. You have your dice. When you roll those dice, you must place them somewhere where they are higher than all of the options that are all than all the dice that are already on there. So if there's no dice there, you have any sort of option. But if someone's already put a 4 there, then you're you're stuck. You can't put it you can't put your 3 on a spot where someone's already put a 4. So you have to go and be more selective when you have those higher dice on where it is that you want to put them. And then often people are going to be rolling those higher dice. On the other hand, sometimes you want to roll a higher die so you can get above a target that someone else has done. So if everyone just rolls a bunch of 1s, you'll be just as locked up as if everyone rolls a bunch of 6s. So sometimes you want to roll some 3s and some 4s and some 1s so that you're both able to get over other people's hurdles and get under hurdles for everyone else and not put out any hurdles for everyone else. So that is how those actions and those card work. You're playing those actions to create new action spaces for people to put out more dice, which also alleviates the issue of blocking out players because you're putting out more action spaces. Or some of the cards are going to be continuous cards. So those are cards that are played to your area. They're kind of similar to that special bonus power card that you got at the beginning, except that this time it has a piece of art associated with it. These are continuous cards that give you a benefit that applies generally to you, but sometimes to all players. But it's just it's essentially an always on card, always on power, and it doesn't go to the action space. And then there's once cards. Once cards are sort of like events for Arkham Horror or something like that, where it's played, it does a thing, and then that's it. It doesn't continue to stay in play. Generally, it takes an action. There's an action by default printed on the board. Generally, it takes an action to be able to play a card. This can mean that if you haven't played any other actions to let you play more cards, and there are only high dice on play more cards, you don't get to play more cards. You are stuck having to do other actions. By extension, that also means if as a team or as a solo team, you want to be able to play a bunch of cards, you need to be very careful with the dice that you are putting on that slot.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that acts pretty strongly in your benefit is you can take turns in whatever order you like. So, let's say that the first player to go puts a 1 on the play card spot, and second player to go puts a 2 on that one. A last player to go only rolls 5s, and he's like, I still want to play a card. Like, I need to play cards, they do cool stuff. So he puts a 5 there. Well, next round, you can let that player with a 5 go first, and then he can just remove that 5 for his first one, and hopefully roll, say, a 3 or whatever it is, and remove some of the worst dice that are there. Now then, it's part of the complication for that is, well, let's say that player has a 1 in one spot and a 5 in the other. Who goes first? Which one of those is the worst one you can do? So it, as opposed to, and I can't list necessarily specific ones, but there are many games where for these kind of cooperative games, you're stuck, everyone keeps going around the table. But for this one, there's a whole decision point about what order it is that you want to be able to go. And that means that there's all sorts of options. Let's say, some person has a power that gives out money. There's someone has the ability to give out extra money. Probably let him go first. So the person who can use that money to turn into influence or save the animals has extra cash available to them. Or you need someone to move off, so you do that. There's a whole lot of interplay between the card play and which dice are out on these actions that make for a robust decision point, in even so much as who goes first. Never mind which actions you do, which cards you play. Who goes first becomes a discussion point when you're playing this. And I'm saying this to highlight there's a lot of thought and reward that goes into this game for playing it well. And that is stuff I like
I
in
see.
games.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. The because otherwise, I mean, if you're rolling the dice and just playing where they go, and it ends up being just luck of the die, and that's all you got, right? So adding that option of choosing the order really makes it go from a luck based game to strategy.
In addition, with the cards you have, because
And
different
yeah,
players will have different cards that can do different benefits.
yep. And then it's not just, oh, we want to go in the order of the lowest to highest every time. You may also want to say, well, yes, we do want to do that, but even though I'm kind of higher, and I may skip a person, it'll benefit us if I play this card now. That's what I think, I guess.
Yeah,
So that's
and I
pretty
mean
cool.
a common one that you want that has happened to me a bunch of times. So for the impact phase, when the scenario is taking its turn, in addition to seeing if there's new babies and seeing if you have destruction, you're going to play a card from the scenario deck, and those do different things. In general, they're instance and persistence, which again are cards that are played out and cards that are just played and immediately discarded. For the instant ones, those do a thing and then they're gone. The persistent ones, though, will linger and will be painful as they linger. Some of them, very rarely, there's a couple scenarios that have good persistent cards. But in general, these are ones that linger. So, like, there's a couple that say, like, for example, like, I don't think it's one, but heartbroken. When you lose an animal, another animal has to die also. For just as an example,
Oh,
you're like,
okay, yeah.
oh, that is really really rough. Those will continue on until usually something that triggers them remove them, or a player plays a card or uses an action to remove them. So very often we'll say, hey, you have in your hand, or more often, yeah, when I'm playing solo multi-handed, which is how I usually play this solo, I will say to me, hey, you. I will have dual side conversations. So I will say, hey, you. So I will say, hey, you have the card in hand that lets us get rid of this persistent impact. If we don't get rid of this persistent impact, we have a pretty high chance of losing extra animals or of losing extra influence or whatever the bad thing is. Probably, even though it's not going to be great in terms of your action, we probably want to get that card played. Can we do that? And so that's just another point that adds into all of this about who goes next. What cards are you playing? What actions are you going to do?
Hmm.
Yeah. So all of that means also that there's a lot of replayability between the different scenarios because each scenario will have different ways that the animals move, and each scenario will have different ways that the impact card can affect your game. Like some of them, the impact cards are more nice, and the movement of them is more rough. Some of them, the movement is controllable or just neutral, but the impact deck is worse. Or some of them, like with butterflies, the way they spawn more butterflies is you drop them on the board and they go where they are. And it's just really all over the place. So it adds a lot of replayability for the different scenarios. I think the thing that is not as replayable is the fact that there's only been 5 characters and they've not had any expansion characters.
Hmm.
So yeah, so you just have the same 5 characters, and also those 5 characters for the most part play relatively similarly because they have the same 10 or however many it is, but there's the base set of cards that are the same across all of them. And so while all of them have a special power all to themselves that can push them towards one way or the other, they they feel relatively similar, and a lot of the replayability comes from the different scenarios. I'm pretty sure that they're going all in on that because they just keep releasing additional scenarios and haven't really released any additional characters.
What kind of abilities do the characters have?
What kind of abilities?
Yeah. Like what
Well,
makes them,
there's
how do they feel different?
so they feel different because I mean, essentially different things. There's at this point in time they've released additional roles, additional specialty cards for the different characters. So I think it's up to 4 per character. But like the celebrity person will use her fame to garner additional influence, and so she tends to be better influence, and she will spend money to throw out influence points all at once. The philanthropist will be very good at getting money. Usually, it's like if you're getting one money, you can get a second money or a second money for someone else or things like that. There's the lawyer who's pretty good at suing out of existence those persistent impact cards and can really act well to get rid of those. There's the TV wildlife host that is no, it's the zoologist. I think it's the zoologist who's good at moving people around and moving the animals around to make sure that you have mating pairs and to keep them safe from things.
Hmm.
The TV wildlife host, I can't think what they do special, but I'm relatively impressed that if I managed to name all five of them well, then I'm impressed that I've been able to do that without actually opening the box.
Yeah, and they're all thematic. So I imagine that person does something like raising awareness so that people spend more
Something like
money on
that.
them. Some I don't know. Yeah, who
But
knows?
they're general because again, there's a lot of stuff that plays in between them too. So
Hmm. It sounds really cool. The game sounds really neat.
yeah,
And then there's all these expansions.
there are. Oh, so the expansions have also added more replayability by those ambassadors. All those ambassadors feel very different. So, like, some ambassadors want to have like a specific setup for the way the animals are, or to make sure that you have enough cards plus enough money in play, or something like you have to roll at least a six. Plus, yeah, it has to be six plus however many cubes you have on there. So if you have six cubes there, well, then you'll definitely roll a six because it adds one to your roll for however many cubes there are there. So that there's ones that are just random die rolls, and so some of the time, like you're looking at it, and the end of the game comes down to it, and you're like, look, we've put everything we can. We are coming down to a die roll, guys. This is going to be like a 1 in 3 chance to just roll this die, and maybe we're good or maybe we're not. Like I don't know. And you roll that die, and all of it comes down to this moment that you've managed to eke it out. And although that's a lucky end to it, you've pushed a lot to even get to that spot to make sure that there are still at least two animals alive, and that it's
Yeah.
not a total blowout on that roll because like a 0 and 6, it's not. You've at least done something to it. And so keeps the tension often all the way there, all the way until the end. Sometimes it's a blowout that you're winning, and sometimes it's a blowout that you're losing, as with many games, but it can bring the tension all the way to the end.
How many scenarios are there with the expansions? You said the base game has two.
Let me count. Oh, there has been actually. I'm looking at the expansion. So there has been one additional person. It was the celebrity, but I think that came with the basic one. But let me count. So the base game comes with two. The
Hmm.
expansion came with six additional ones. That's the first expansion came with six more. And since then, they've released one more single scenario expansion, which was the butterflies. And then there's the other one that was on Kickstarter at one point in time and hasn't come out yet, which is the American Red Wolf. And I know there are more coming out. I'm sure they're not done with that, but they've made comments that there's more coming. So, they're going to keep pouring into this one.
Ah, okay, I see. So there's stuff like new species expansion and biodiversity expansion or something like that.
I don't know what you mean by I don't know what you mean by biodiversity. There's new species. So there was the monarch butterflies, there's the American red wolf, there's sea turtles, there's polar bears, there's elephants, there's uh, there is giant panda also. I think that was a bonus that came out with the Kickstarter one
Okay.
as I'm looking through here. Because the way I have it is just in a big giant deck box, which doesn't list all of them. So it is what it is. There's the jaguars, there's the tapirs. Um, yeah, there's a whole bunch. They changed how the base game has them all in the rule book, the scenario setup instructions, but past that, there's these nice chunky big cards that go over what each of them are. And I prefer the chunky cards as opposed to the rule books. But yeah, that's
Okay.
all for the expansion stuff.
Okay. And that Center for Biological Diversity I was mentioning,
Yes,
that is basically it's just two cards. It's a promo with two cards in it. One is two rows, one for the lawyer and one for somebody else. So not a lot. So, but there's a lot of different expansions and things in general for this game, right? There's looks like BGG has about a dozen expansions listed total, expansions and promos.
something like
So if you're a
that.
person that likes hunting those things out, this could be a game to get and just try and complete it.
I mean, they've made it all very available. Nothing is unavailable. You can
Oh,
find all
okay.
of these things. So some of it's available in the BGG stores. Some of it, like they republished again during the recent Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not making it hard to find. It may just be between printings, but it's available.
Tantrum
It's
House
there.
promos. Yeah. Okay.
So that's Endangered.
Very cool. It sounds like a really neat game. Actually, I like it. I'm almost tempted to get it.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, final overview. I like it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Julius likes it, but we all knew that.
As just in case that's not clear.
We were just humoring you, letting you talk about it more. You sold us on it a long time ago.
I mean, I like it. I think that it's a fun game. I like the theme of it. I am a relatively ecological type minded person. So yeah, I really enjoy the game. I think it's a lot of fun and I do recommend it.
All right. I don't have any good endings. Do you? Like, I mean, should we kill some elephants out of here? I don't think that's right. So,
An elephant never forgets.
okay, there we go. We'll take it. Um, and that's it for this week, everyone. Thank you. We're off for Thanksgiving, so we're gonna skip a week after this episode, unless something magical happens. I don't expect it to.
Thanks for listening. We love feedback, so we love hearing from you. You can reach me at Julius at oneplayerpodcast.com or JLBird on BGG, and Albert can be reached at Albert at oneplayerpodcast.com or Fractalud on BGG. Our website is oneplayerpodcast.com with the number 1, and we're also on Twitter at oneplayerpodcast. The intro music is copyright Angus, can be found at jamendo.com. The transition music is copyright by Dan Elduce Pancaldi, whose page is at donpancaldi.com. The One Player Podcast is protected under a Creative Commons share-alike license. Thanks for listening.